Audiobook Academy Biography presents Stephen Hawking. Popular science novels like A Brief History of Time were written by Stephen Hawking, a physicist famed for his work on black holes and relativity. British physicist and novelist Stephen Hawking conducted significant work in physics and cosmology, and his books made science more accessible to the general public. He was diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, at the age of 21 while studying cosmology at the University of Cambridge, ALS. The Theory of Everything, a 2014 film, featured a portion of his life narrative. Infancy. In Oxford, England, Hawking was born on January 8, 1942. The 300th anniversary of Galileo's death fell on his birthday, which had long been a source of pride for the eminent physicist. Frank and Isabel Hawking had 4 children. Eldest son Stephen was the first to be born. Although few women could attend university in Scotland in the 1930s, his mother managed to get into Oxford University. His father, a medical researcher specializing in tropical diseases, was a well-respected Oxford alumnus. As a child, Hawking was born during an inconvenient period for his parents, who lacked money. When the Hawkings lived in London to do medical research, the political situation was heated due to World War II and the barrage of German bombers. Isabel returned to Oxford to give birth to the couple's first child in search of a more secure location. Mary and Philippa Hawkins were the couple's next 2 children. In 1956, they adopted a second child, Edward. As a close family acquaintance put it, the Hawking family was eccentric. The Hawkings ate dinner in silence, with each of them engrossed in a book. In St. Albans, they lived in a 3-story fixer-upper with an ancient London taxi as a family vehicle. Bees were kept in the basement, and pyrotechnics were made in the greenhouse by the Hawkings. In 1950, Hawking's father accepted a position as director of the National Institute of Medical Research's Division of Parasitology, where he spent the winter months conducting research on parasitic diseases. He had hoped that his oldest child, Stephen Hawking, would pursue a career in medicine, but from an early age, he demonstrated an interest in physics and the night sky. The fact that his mother and her children regularly sat in the backyard on summer nights to gaze at the night sky was clear to her. The last thing she remembered was Stephen's sense of wonder. Moreover, I could tell that the stars would entice him. Hawking, on the other hand, was often on the go. Mary Hawking, Hawking's climbing-obsessed sibling, devised a number of different ways to get inside the family home. He was a talented dancer who developed a passion for rowing in college, when he rose to the rank of coxswain. Education. Hawking, despite being considered brilliant, was not an extraordinary student in his early years of education. He was the third-to-last student in his class's first year at St. Albans School. He was devastated. As for his academic ambitions, Stephen Hawking was more interested in playing board games and making new ones with pals. To solve simple mathematical equations, Hawking and a group of pals built a computer out of repurposed materials when he was in his teens. At the age of 17, Stephen Hawking enrolled in University College at the University of Oxford. Because Oxford didn't offer a degree in mathematics when he applied, Hawking turned to physics and, in particular, cosmology. According to Hawking's own admission, he didn't devote much attention to his studies. He estimated that he spent roughly an hour a day focusing on education. And yet, he wasn't required to do much else. At Trinity Hall at the University of Cambridge, he received a PhD in cosmology in 1962 after graduating with honors from the Natural Sciences Department in 1961. In 1968, Stephen Hawking joined Cambridge's Institute of Astronomy. The following several years were lucrative for Hawking's work. The Large-Scale Structure of Space-Time, co-authored with G.F.R. Ellis, was published in 1973. In 1979, Hawking returned to the University of Cambridge, when he was appointed as the Lucasian Professor of Mathematics, a position that had been vacant since 1663. Family. Hawking met Jane Wilde at a New Year's Eve party in 1963, and the two became friends. In 1965, they tied the knot. Robert was born in 1967, and Lucy was born in 1970, to the couple. Timothy was born in 1979, the family's third child. For Elaine Mason, Hawking's nurse, he divorced Jane in 1990. In 1995, they tied the knot. Hawking's relationship with his children was strained by his marriage to Elaine, who they thought had cut him off from them. While caring for Hawking in 2003, caregivers suspected that Elaine was physically abusing him and called the police. The police probe was halted after Hawking refuted the charges. Hawking and Elaine filed for divorce in 2006, and it was finalized the following year. The scientist is said to have become closer to his family over the years. He was able to mend relations with Jane's second husband. In addition, he and his daughter Lucy co-wrote and co-published 5 children's books with a science theme. Books by Stephen Hawking. Hawking penned or co-authored 15 books during the course of his career. Here are a few notable examples. A Brief History of Time. A Brief History of Time, published in 1988, launched Hawking's career as a household name. Short and educational, the book served as an introduction to cosmology for the general public, providing an outline of the universe, God's presence, and our future. For more than 4 years, the book occupied the top spot on the Sunday Times bestseller list in London. After publication, it has sold millions of copies around the world and been translated into more than 40 languages. The Universe in a Nutshell. In addition, several readers found it difficult to follow A Brief History of Time. Hawking's book The Universe in a Nutshell, published in 2001, presented a more visual overview of the field's most important theories. A Briefer History of Time. In 2005, Hawking published A Briefer History of Time, which significantly reduced the previous work's fundamental concepts and included current advancements in the subject, such as string theory, as well as a more accessible version of the original work. With the help of these 3 books, as well as Hawking's own research and papers, these 3 volumes in Hawking's own hunt for science's holy grail, the ability to integrate cosmology, the study of the great, and quantum mechanics, the study of the small, to explain how the universe began. Hawking, who claimed to be able to think in 11 dimensions, was able to sketch out a wide range of possibilities for humanity. That time travel is conceivable and that humans will populate other planets in the future was firmly established in his mind. The Grand Design. In his book The Grand Design, published in September of that year, Stephen Hawking argued that God could not have created the universe. Previously, Hawking maintained that modern scientific ideas might be reconciled with a belief in a creator. His conclusion that the Big Bang was a result of the physical laws of nature was made in this study. The universe may and will build itself from nothing because there is a law such as gravity, Hawking stated. Why do we have a cosmos, and why do we exist? It's because of spontaneous creation, says Albert Einstein. It had been nearly a decade since Hawking's last big publication, The Grand Design. By arguing that the world could not have arisen from chaos, Hawking hoped to refute Isaac Newton's idea that the universe was created by God. When it comes to starting the universe, Hawking said, it's not essential to mention God. Disease. Diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS, at the age of 21, Hawking was forced to retire. Nerves that govern his muscles were shutting down in a very basic way. His prognosis at the time was just 2.5 years. During his first year at Cambridge, in 1963, Hawking began to notice that he was having difficulties with his physical condition. He would slip and fall, and his speech would be slurred from time to time. Hawking had largely kept his symptoms to himself up to this point. Nonetheless, Hawking's father took him to the doctor when he noticed his son's condition. The 21-year-old college student spent the following 2 weeks living in a medical clinic while undergoing a battery of examinations. One time, they took a muscle sample from my arm, injected some radio-opaque fluid into my spine, and saw it moving using X-rays. As they tilted the bed, he recalled. The only thing they told me was that it wasn't MS and that I was an exceptional case after all that. Doctors did, however, eventually discover that Hawking had ALS in its early stages. He and his family were devastated by the news, but a few incidents kept him from succumbing to total devastation. This was the first of a series of events that occurred while Hawking was still hospitalized. He had to share a room with a youngster who had leukemia at the time. Hawking later said that compared to what his roommate was going through, his condition was more bearable. Hawking had a dream soon after he was released from the hospital that he was going to be put to death. In the wake of this dream, he claimed, he realized that he still had a lot to accomplish. He became a world-renowned scientist in part because of his illness. Hawking had been slacking in his academic pursuits before being diagnosed. Before my condition was diagnosed, I had been very bored with life, he said. There had not seemed to be anything worth doing. As he became acutely aware that he would not survive long enough to get his doctorate, Stephen Hawking threw himself into his work. The progression of his sickness slowed as his physical abilities deteriorated. He would be confined to a wheelchair by 1969. However, as Hawking's career progressed, his physical health deteriorated. How did Stephen Hawking communicate? A graduate student of Hawking's had been taken in by the family by the mid-1970s to help with his care and work. He was able to feed himself and get out of bed on his own, but he needed help with nearly everything else. As a result, his speech had become progressively slurred, making it difficult for anybody except close friends to understand him. After a tracheotomy in 1985, he was permanently deafened. As a result, the world-renowned physicist needed round-the-clock nursing care. It also put Hawking's ability to carry out his research in jeopardy. A California computer programmer who had designed a speech program that could be directed by head or eye movement was alerted to the dilemma by the predicament. Selected words were sent into a speech synthesizer by Hawking using this new technology. When it was first introduced, Hawking used a handheld clicker to pick his words because he still had use of his fingers. Hawking was eventually able to control the program through a sensor linked to a muscle in his face. Hawking was able to continue his prolific output thanks to the program and the assistance of his helpers. Naturally, he published numerous scientific publications, but he also produced non-scientific material. When Hawking failed to show up at a meeting in Arizona in 2009 due to a chest ailment, the fear was magnified. As recently as April, Stephen Hawking was hospitalized for what university officials described as gravely unwell, even though he eventually recovered and announced his retirement from the Lucasian Professorship of Mathematics at Cambridge. Research into black holes and the universe. The discovery that black holes aren't information vacuums, as previously assumed, made Hawking a household name in the scientific community in 1974. A collapsed star's gravitational pull can be broken by radiation, as proved by Stephen Hawking. One of Hawking's favorite topics was the origins of the universe, and a young cosmologist named Roger Penrose had already made significant discoveries concerning stars and the formation of black holes. Hawking and Penrose then collaborated to expand on Penrose's earlier work, leading to accolades, notoriety, and distinguished titles that transform the way the world views black holes and the universe. The unveiling of Hawking's radiation theory set off a surge of enthusiasm among the scientific community. A Fellow of the Royal Society at the age of 32, Hawking went on to receive the Albert Einstein Award, among other accolades, for his contributions to physics. While in California, he served as a visiting lecturer at Caltech, California Institute of Technology, and at Gonville and Caius College in Cambridge. Earlier this year, Stephen Hawking appeared at a conference in Sweden to discuss the information conundrum and new hypotheses about black holes. Hawking postulated that information about the physical condition of an object that enters a black hole is kept in 2D form within an outer limit known as the event horizon, the point at which an event will take place. Black holes are not the perpetual prisons that they were once assumed to be. According to this study, in the event that the information is released into another universe, he left the door open. Universe's beginning. In an interview with Neil deGrasse Tyson Star Talk in March 2018, Hawking said there was nothing around before the Big Bang. He said that by replacing real time with imaginary time, the history of the cosmos becomes like a four-dimensional curving surface, with no boundaries. The South Pole of the Earth is a location in spacetime where the regular rules of physics hold, and since there is nothing south of the South Pole, there was nothing before the Big Bang, he said. Hawking and space travel. A major step toward spaceflight was taken by Stephen Hawking in 2007 when he was 65 years old. He had the chance to experience zero gravity at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida while on a visit there. Hawking, a passenger on a modified Boeing 727, was able to experience bursts of weightlessness over the Atlantic for 2 hours. Pictures of the physicist in mid-air appeared in publications all across the world. The zero-G experience was great, and the high-G experience was no difficulty at all. My ramblings were not limited to these few points. I'm going to space, he explained. Sir Richard Branson had planned to fly Hawking to the edge of space as a pioneer space tourist. In 2007, he said in a statement, "Life on Earth is at the ever-increasing risk of being wiped out by a disaster, such as sudden global warming, nuclear war, a genetically engineered virus or other dangers. I think the human race has no future if it doesn't go into space. I therefore want to encourage public interest in space." Appearances in film and TV. Hawking was the epitome of a rock star scientist, if there ever was one. Along with performances on shows like Star Trek, The Next Generation and Late Night with Conan O'Brien with comic Jim Carrey, he also recorded a voiceover for the Pink Floyd song Keep Talking. A Brief History of Time, a 1992 documentary by Oscar-winning filmmaker Errol Morris, chronicled the life of Stephen Hawking. In addition to this, she has appeared in the following films and television shows. The Big Bang Theory. In 2012, Stephen Hawking made a special appearance on The Big Bang Theory, showing off his comedic side. After spotting an error in the work of theoretical physicist Sheldon Cooper, Jim Parsons, Hawking reprises his role as himself in this beloved comedy about a bunch of young, geeky scientists. Hawking was applauded for making light of the subject matter. Everything is explained in Theory of Everything. Hawking and Jane Wilde, A Love Story premiered in theaters in November of 2014. Starring Eddie Redmayne as Stephen Hawking, the theory of everything follows Hawking's childhood, his courting of and marriage to Oscar-winning actress Olivia Wilde, the course of his condition, and his scientific breakthroughs. Genius. Earlier this year, Stephen Hawking hosted and narrated Genius, a 6-episode television series that enlists volunteers to answer scientific issues that have been posed throughout time. It's been Hawking's lifetime goal to introduce science to the general population, and Genius is a project that furthers that goal. If you've ever wondered if you're smart enough to think like some of the greatest brains in history, this show is for you. Being a pessimist, my hope is that they do. In other words, his iBrain. iBrain, a new headband-style device, was tested by Hawking's in 2011. Waveforms of electrical brain impulses are picked up by the device, which then uses an algorithm to understand the wearer's thoughts, according to a story in the New York Times. This technology has the potential to be a game-changer for those suffering with ALS. Hawking on artificial intelligence. Stephen Hawking and other prominent scientists called for deeper investigation into the possible hazards of artificial intelligence, AI, in 2014. The film Transcendence, starring Johnny Depp, depicts a conflict between humanity and technology. Successful AI development would be a historic event, according to the researchers. As a result, it may also be the final time. Unless we learn how to avoid the dangers. When this technology out-invents human researchers, out-manipulates human leaders, and develops weapons we cannot even fathom, the organization warned of dire consequences. Speaking in Portugal's capital of Lisbon in November 2017, Hawking reaffirmed this position. To put it another way, we cannot know if we will be infinitely helped by AI or ignored and sidelined or conceivably destroyed by it. He noted that AI has the potential to help eradicate poverty and disease, but it could also lead to potentially destructive actions like the development of autonomous weapons. Hawking and the Alien. Breakthrough Listen was announced at a press conference hosted by Stephen Hawking in London in July of that year. Russian entrepreneur Yuri Milner provided the seed money for Breakthrough Listen, which was established to increase funding for searches for extraterrestrial life. Making a splash on the web. Properties of Expanding Universes was published online by Cambridge University in October 2017. The university's server was immediately overwhelmed by the demand for access, yet the document nonetheless received a whopping 60,000 views in its first day online. How long was Stephen Hawking's life expectancy? ALS finally claimed the life of Stephen Hawking on March 14, 2018, more than half a century after he was first diagnosed with the disease. A spokeswoman for the scientist's family confirmed that he died at his Cambridge, England, home. A wide range of people, both within and outside of his area, were moved to tears by the news. His colleague and author Lawrence Krauss shared this tweet: "The galaxy has just lost a star. Tributes have been paid to an exceptional human being." For 76 years, Hawking heroically fought and tamed the cosmos, teaching us all an essential lesson about what it means to genuinely cherish being human. The children of Stephen Hawking made a statement: "We are devastated by the passing of our loving father today. As a scientist and an amazing person, his work and legacy will continue for many years to come." People throughout the world were impressed by his courage and persistence, as well as his brilliance and sense of humor. "If it weren't for the people you care about, the universe wouldn't be worth living in," he added. As a family, we will miss him for the rest of our lives. After a few weeks of speculation, it was revealed that Stephen Hawking's ashes would be interred in London's Westminster Abbey, with other scientific giants including Isaac Newton and Charles Darwin. His final paper was published in the Journal of High Energy Physics on May 2, 2018. Under the title A Smooth Escape from Endless Inflation? Belgium's Thomas Hertog, a leading physicist, co-authored a new paper that challenges the conventional wisdom that the cosmos will continue to expand indefinitely. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.